But this talks about things that are happening within the state and within your own district that might impact your future operations. And the biggest thing in your case is your enrollment is declining. I don't think there's any news to anybody at the table here. And you've taken some steps to try and mitigate some of that. You've got the e-campus sort of thing where you can provide services to students that are not in your district. The only downside of that is, and not from your perspective, but there are a lot of districts going to that. That's years ago you could go in and you knew every student that they had listed was from inside the district boundaries. With the internet and that type of activity, and DPI lessening the restrictions on delivery of education, if you will, you can have students from Rhineland attending classes in the Watertown district. So the next section is a little more detail on the numbers I talked about earlier. If you look at page 15, statement of net position, the only thing I'm going to mention here, and I know for the people who've been here before, I've mentioned this in the past, but if you look at the assets, there's an asset listed, Wisconsin Retirement System net pension, and it's an asset of almost $12 million. I immediately say, don't go out and spend that. It's not money you can spend. Okay, the Wisconsin Retirement System, probably about 5 years ago, the standards that we're required to report under, they required every school district, basically across the country, every governmental unit that participates in the system like the Wisconsin Retirement System, they get their little, 0.5%, and you have to reflect that stuff on their financial statements. I don't know if that's good or bad. I'm not here to give you an opinion on that, but it does beef up your balance sheet or your net position. Some people might say, hey, there's $12 million there. Again, a lot of that number is generated due to the fact that the Wisconsin Retirement System is well run. And at the end of last year, when these numbers are reported, it was funded at 106% of its expected liabilities, which means for every dollar they think they're going to have to pay out in the future, they have $1.06 that they're going to either take in or already have in-house. I believe they're probably either one or two in the nation for funding level. If you go down to Illinois, if you go to California, you go some other states, it's much less than that. And some of the other states are having to borrow long-term to fund their pensions. So now after 2022's stock market returns, next year I might be saying, hey, there's a liability on the bottom half of the balance sheet, but don't worry, you don't have to pay that. Okay, it just kind of depends on what the market does and the actuarial studies that go into that. So if we want to, if you're going to flip to page 17, this balance sheet for governmental funds, this is really the kind of information that DPI gets from the district. Strictly assets and liabilities, there's no fixed assets here, there's no long-term debt. And then you have your fund balance or your fund equity. You've got a very healthy fund balance. I know there's the process was to accumulate some of that fund balance. You had a referendum to exceed the levy limits, which is expiring. So this allowed you to bank some of that, I think, for like any prudent businessman would, put money aside for future, maybe hard times, less revenue coming in. And this allows you to still deliver your educational product and services and not have to cut a lot of stuff. Okay. So your fund balance is in good shape. As I mentioned earlier, instruction is more than 50% of your expenses which is typical. We do about 18 to 20 districts out of the Manitowoc office. The fund balance typically ranges from, I'd say, probably about 15 to, well, in your case, it's 55% of one-year expenditures. And the instruction goes anywhere from 52 to 63%. So you're right in the ballpark on where you should be. Again, your fund balance, you built it up with the idea that down the road you may not have that additional referendum money. So footnotes come after this. A lot of boilerplate language. Nothing real significant there. I guess the only thing I would mention is on pages 38, 39. We talk about self-funded insurance. As many of you are probably aware, and we show 2 years there, June 30th, 2021 and 2022. You had a self-insurance program up until January 1st of 2021. And then you went to commercial insurance for your health insurance. You are still self-insured for dental, which is why the 2021 items in the footnote do show a fair amount of activity in the $4 million range in claims and revenues. And then in the year into 2022, it's really just dental activity that's there. In the dental, you don't pay a premium, but you charge your dental program based on what you think it's going to cost in a year. It gets charged out every payroll, and then they pay the claims, and hopefully you have enough set aside when you make that guesstimate. Much less risk in doing just a dental self-insurance, and with going to commercial insurance. I know in some instances, self-insurance it is a good thing. It might save you a few dollars, but sometimes you have catastrophic stuff that can put you in a hole in a hurry. And typically, you're probably one of the smaller districts that we do that does have that did have self-insurance. I'm not going to again say it's good or bad, but it's less risk with going to a commercial end. It also allows you to like negotiate rates and some of that kind of stuff. So after that, some additional information like I referred to earlier on. And as I mentioned about the 106% funding, if you look at page 42, you've got about 8 years of activity for Wisconsin retirement system. And if you look in the first table at the top of that, that shows the percent funding each year. And you can see you've got 5 years where the Wisconsin retirement system was funded at over 100%, and 4 years where it was less, but it was never less than 96%. So it's in pretty good shape there. Not any big swings, and when the market's up, your funding coverage goes up. So that's about all I have. This is just the highlights. Does anyone have any questions?
Board members, have any questions?
I do.
Yes, please.
On the page 17, you said the fund balance. We had, can you tell us what like a normal fund balance would be in a district?
A normal fund balance, number one, DPI has information on their website that talks about fund balance. And the first thing they say is, we're not recommending what a sufficient fund balance is. But just from what I see, if you take out the fact that you were building it up on purpose, most of the fund balance I see is anywhere from, I would say, 20 to 30%. Okay. And generally, my opinion, if it's 25% or so, that's a pretty good number.
Okay. And Chuck, I said, have you repeat something on page 52. One of the things I always look at is internal controls. So there's the initial opinion on overall how clean is it, and then the second part that I always look at is the opinion on internal controls. And again, if I'm reading this right, you're giving us a clean bill of health from
Yeah.
an internal
Yeah.
controls perspective.
Yeah, the only item that we have written up in the, recently, and it's been, as Tony knows, it's been there for some time, and it's not practical to correct.
Right.
Is that your staff, while they have more than enough knowledge to report from a DPI perspective, which is one of the reasons I pointed out, okay, this is the DPI schedule, this is the non-DPI schedule. As you can see, there's a lot of footnote information in the financial statements, and your staff wouldn't be able to report, do that type of work. But from a DPI perspective, they're way more than adequate. They do a great job. Frankly, if you didn't have Stacy kind of bridging the gap these last few years, then you might have had some issues. But she does really quality work.
Thank you. Again, I just wanted to repeat, make sure I was interpreting that correctly, a clean bill of health from an internal controls perspective.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from board members on the audit presentation? We do thank you for coming down first. We appreciate that.
And if there are other questions you think about later, send them to the business office. They will forward them to me. And we'll get an answer.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thanks.
All right, that will take us then to reports, and our first one up is the superintendent's report.
So while waiting for Tyler, I'm just going to tell you that I'm not going to come with the same bounce in my step as I have the last couple. Since about Thursday, I haven't been feeling the best, but I am on the rebound, so I am trying to keep a distance. So with that, here's my January report. As soon as I can get some controls. Okay. Start off with non-responsive. That's okay. Got it. Did not like that. Part of the reason we're moving to some new screens, which we'll talk about, it'll be more reliable. I've taken a test at it already at Webster. It's pretty interesting. There we go. This morning. This morning, we got the real good honor to give, the Army Reserve and Army National Guard, was honoring Principal Josh Kerr with the Patriot Award in recognition for his extraordinary support and the school district's extraordinary support of employees serving in the United States Army. Matthew Dunn, over there on the left, counselor at the high school, is in our reserves and submitted the application for Josh to be awarded this award. It's actually the top award that the Defense Department gives civilians in the support of enlisted people. So it's a really high recognition. And that recognition doesn't only go to Josh. Josh was the named party and is the front runner of that award, but it really is a multi-factor award in that you can see next to Josh's individual award, there's an award to the district itself, meaning the school board, our wonderful HR department with Margaret heading the lead on that, and our support for those enlisted people who have civilian jobs with us. So congratulations to the team and especially Josh Kerr for winning that award. It was a great presentation this morning, followed by a treats and coffee. We had a really good time. There we go. It went. Ooh, ooh. Just want to make sure.
We do it again.
No, it's good. It's good. Here under opportunities is our middle school and high school teachers on December 21st at Watertown High School. They were participating in an illustrative math lesson. It happened to be a 6th grade math lesson. They were learning more about what that curriculum, illustrative math, has to offer as one of our possible selections for the new math program. So it was a pretty good opportunity. This picture was taken just before we had announced that there would be no school the next day because of snow. So they were still very much intent here, but 2 minutes later I heard it was more cheering and everything else, just because they got to think about getting to their winter break a little bit quicker. So next slide, please. Oh, I won't fight it. Another opportunity, here are some of our project search interns, as well as some of their counterparts within the departments at Marquardt, where they were working together at their Mix and Mingle celebration, and thanking them really for the opportunity to be interns in the different departments. So if you haven't had a chance yet to go see Project Search over at Marquardt, that's a wonderful learning opportunity for many of our students in that program. So next. Here are some of our social emotional learning coaches at the State Mental Health Academy. We had about 8 people from our school district in attendance. 2 of those people are in our room here today. Emily is one of our lead principals, and Aaron Meyer are both on that team. Here they're presenting some of the work that they've done on their Watertown Way to Wellness website that they're developing at the State Mental Health Academy, which was one of the projects that they were working on. Next. And then lastly, here's some important reminders for you. Today, there was no school. Teachers had a work day. On February 17th, staff will have a staff development day, so it won't be any school that day. And then, I don't know how I missed November committee board meetings in that, but they are our February meetings, committee meetings, starting on the 14th and 15th. Usually it would be the second Tuesday of the month that Educational Services is, but I don't know why. Our official meeting dates says the 14th, which would not technically be, I don't think, the second.
Yes,
Was it?
yeah, the first starts on Wednesday.
Oh, it was the planning and policy.
Right, that's the one that's off.
That's the one that's off. Okay.
That would normally be the 8th.
That would have been the 8th, but is actually on the 15th, and then February 20th, Human Resources, February 22nd, Fiscal Management, and the 27th. So really the one that we're concerned with is planning or policy. That's a February 15th date and not the 8th. And then we have on January 30th, Mass Orchestra concert, 7 to 9. Any comments or questions?
All right, then we will move ahead to our committee report, starting with fiscal management.
Somebody do it? Or you want to do it? Go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Alright. So, the fiscal management committee, we discussed the HVAC project, the air conditioning project, which is on the agenda later today, so.
You might need to speak up a little bit more to the microphone here, Sarah.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
All there.
And then we also discussed open enrollment seating availability for 2023-24, which is again on the agenda later on. We talked about replacing a vehicle, or actually getting a new vehicle, a truck, an F-550, which is a resolution later as well. And then we talked quite a bit about an update on all the different buildings and grounds projects that are pending in the district. And Josh Carter, the new supervisor of buildings and grounds, he put together a new list and sort of sorted it in a different way. And we went through all of those different projects and talked about each one. We talked about expenditures over 20,000. There really weren't any upcoming that hadn't already been approved. And we looked at payments. There was a couple of questions, and same for the variance report. And that's it.
Comments or questions on that report? All right, thank you. Human resources?
Yes. We met on January 9th. Our committee members, we had the staff here, and then we also had a guest, Bill Fosters from the School Perceptions. He appeared virtually with us because we talked through the employee satisfaction survey discussion, and he's with the company that we went through the details on that. And so we went through right now we have more of a customized survey that we've done the last 4 years. And then we talked through the standard survey and what they offer. He was able to shed some light as far as some of the differences in those things and like what the standard survey gives. They recently have revised the standard survey, and we found a lot of those questions to be very relevant to the different topics and things like that that are going on now. And so the committee is going to do a comparison of the two and see about thinking about changing to the standard questions. And if there were some that we wanted from the custom survey that we had done, we can insert those into those. So we are currently deliberating on that. We're going to be sending some information to Margaret, and we'll be bringing that to our next meeting. We have the consent agenda, in which we have a resolution on that tonight. We also did an education piece on the support staff evaluation process. And so we were able to take a look at some details as far as like the clerical, the support staff, the nutrition services, maintenance, and custodial positions and what those look like. They're kind of, they look different. And so we had just kind of discussed, like, is there a way to be able to bring them together so that there is a little bit more uniformity there? And then we were also given information as far as the difference between performance evaluations, performance improvement in the disciplinary process. So we appreciate all of Margaret's information and helping us understand things along the way. We had to go into some detail there to understand all that. And then we had employee wellness committee update. This is related to our health insurance costs and some of those things that are foreseeably going to be rising. And Dr. Burke, Sarah, and Margaret met with a committee as far as on January 13th to look over what that group will be able to come up with and stuff like that. And that information and those details will be forthcoming in the next meeting. And then the committee agenda planning. This is where Dr. Burke and Ms. Brady will develop a plan for developing the proposal for the 23-24 negotiations and report back to the committee about a board process. I know that's something that we had previously talked about. So that's been kind of in the works that we will get more information on that at our next meeting. And so our next meeting is Monday, February 20th.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions on that report? Thank you. Educational services.
Yes, Ed Services met on January 10th. All members were present, plus a couple of others. Fairly straightforward meeting. We touched on some changes at the in curriculum at the middle school. Probably the highlight of that was teacher John Pickelman's presentation. I thought he did a great job. I think for those members who were there were pretty impressed with his view on how to better engage the students and as well as be that a funnel to some of the programs at the high school. Then there was an ESSER update regarding Panther Power Hour, another very good presentation by teacher Katie Lee. And Principal Whitaker is going to continue to track that and give us additional information regarding its usage and how it's impacting students at RMS. Lastly, we did touch on the Advanced Learner Program. Expect an update to the full board sometime in March or April. And then Dave, at my request, put together an academic testing program overview. And I asked members to review all that information and relay questions to the administration as they arise. Mainly, it ties together everything from STAR to Forward to ACT to the state exams, et cetera, which ones are leading indicators, which ones are lagging indicators, how often they're done, which ones are qualitative, which ones are, it's a rubric which you have to look at the whole thing and it takes up a lot of pages and I'm still trying to understand it all. I would call it, assessment testing for laymen because I'm definitely one of those and I'm still struggling to keep up with it. So for those who are in that line of work, there's a lot to internalize and understand how everything ties together. So once again, that document is available. I encourage you all to find it, review it, and that way when Dr. Vitale or somebody else from the school speaks as to how we did or what we did, that hopefully we'll understand how it impacts what we're trying to do. That was it, unless any member present has any additional comments. And as Jared just said, our next meeting is going to be on February 14th.
The document you're talking about, you're developing the document, or is it?
It's pretty well put together, I think. We talked about adding another column, Dave Smith. What were we gonna? Was there gonna be another column in that we wanted to add? I can't remember.
The cadence that we're gonna be seeing the
Yeah.
results on and kind
Right.
of actions out of each of the results.
Yeah, how it results in actions. But yes, that document is available on maybe your Ed Services page.
Yeah, it's there.
I have a hard copy.
Yeah, it's located on the webpage and the submenu under Ed Services. You can find it there, or if you need it, Doug, I can forward it to you as well. Sure.
And again, thanks, Dave, for putting that together and the rest of your staff. It wasn't a small document and there's a lot of information in there.
Would it be beneficial to just forward it to all board members? That way, easy button to have?
If it's, the only reason why I'd be, yes, we can, I think we can definitely do that, is that given that it's kind of still a work in progress, if ever, I'd like it to go to one link as opposed to, so send a link, not a hard copy, or that way people can always refer back to the link in case we change it. But yes, otherwise that can be sent out, yeah.
Comments or questions on that?
That's nice that you put that together.
Yeah, put that together.
Yeah.
I was
looking down that.
I dodged it. I didn't do anything.
Well, you initiated it, so.
I said I was confused. That's what happened.
Before we move on to
That's how they
planning,
get
anything you
done.
want to add about policy?
I do want to add about policy, and Jared, I'm not sure when your next weekly or bi-weekly update is, but we need to resurrect the list of backlog of policy items. I know that there's a couple on there. I think Lori was sponsoring one. Craig had one that he wanted to sponsor. I'm not sure which ones are up for draft at this time. Minor revisions, I don't think, once Lynn gets fully into the workflow, I'm not even sure which series we're looking at for minor revisions, which is mostly syntactical type corrections. But I'm sure that Lori and Craig have been talking to Jared about the changes they've wanted as far as major, but I don't know those off the top of my head. But that meeting, of course, is then on the 15th, as just noted by Jared.
Yeah, we're scheduled to have one tomorrow Friday, so we'll do that. We'll hook the assessment piece right into the update. So Dave, you don't have to take an extra step to do that. I've got the link to your blog already. We'll just
It's right there. It's always there. It's
Yeah.
always there.
and so but we'll,
Updated in real time.
We'll link it to that specific part of the page.
And then, of course, in that, Jared will have the policies that are going to be reviewed on the 15th, both for minor and major.
And the major one, the one that you probably have the most interest in is the anti-bullying policy. Is going to get a major overhaul, looking at some of the DPI model policy work that they put together and have out there on their webpage. So if you just go to the DPI's webpage on bullying, there's a resource on there that has their model policy, and we're using quite a bit of the language from that model policy and what we want to proffer forward for a change. So much like can't get the disease,
Communicable disease, yeah.
communicable disease policy that we had earlier in the year, where we basically said, here's the old one, we're not gonna do the blackouts, whatever, we're just gonna show you what the new one looks like. That's what you'll see with the bullying policy too, because that's how dramatic the changes are gonna be in what that looks like. So we'll just show you the old policy and say, here's what we're proposing for a new policy. To try to capture all of the changes will be difficult.
All right, thank you. Planning?
All right, on January 11th, we had our planning committee. Everybody was present on the committee, along with Dr. Burke and Dave Vidal. So the planning committee, this go around, we were just talking about communication within our district, and we had, previous to this, we had three proposals made. So we got it down to two, the Donovan Group and D&D Communication. And at this meeting, the committee recommended that we go with D&D Communication. That'll be a resolution tonight. And then we talked about, well, we didn't talk about, but strategic plan was on the agenda, and we deferred that to future. And then we adjourned at 6:40.
Can I just add one
Please.
statement? In the communication piece that we were looking for, to do an audit of our communication and write a communication plan and then give support for a year. That coming down to the top two groups, Donovan Group and D&D, Doug actually made a really great project for them to work on. He took basically our strategic plan in the 4 areas and said, show us how you have addressed this with other school districts. And just both companies were very impressive, but D&D really did a thorough job in sharing with and talking about how they would strategically work on those, giving kind of some baseline ideas. Really, I think is what put them over the top and became a unanimous choice of the committee that they've recommended for you for later today as one of the resolutions. So I want to say thank you to the committee, because that was a long process, but I know it's a large outlay that we're going to do, but I think a year from now, when we look back at where we are with communications, it's really going to pay off in the long run. So I'm really excited to be able to work with them and to help with that. So just want to say thank you.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions on the planning report?
So how do we summarize that commitment with the communications? Like what are we getting in a nutshell for those of us? Who haven't been-
Basically three things, but more in detail, you can look to the link that is in there, but just basic detail, we're going to have a communications audit that's done. And then from that communications audit, they're going to help us develop a communications plan. And that communications plan is going to be working with us on a weekly and monthly timeline basis within the plan, have different steps to things to think about to create kind of a yearly schedule of communications, as well as looking at how we can communicate better. And then it kind of transitions into that year-long support item to help us get better at communicating based off of that plan. So that's what the whole price includes. And like I said, it's if you look at the detail that's in her proposal, then you can see that laid out even more. in that.
And who's our internal champion with that?
Say that again.
Who's our internal champion with that?
I am for now, because I think I need to have some more overall look at least as we go through the audit process and we go through the plan development, just to get an idea of the types of communication, everything else. That will tie me closely to it. If at some point in time we decide to put that into a different person's hands, or we decide to hire a communications person or those kinds of things. And I know we're thinking about different structures. That's something that we'll discuss at that time. But right now, it's going to be me, and probably through a good foreseeable future, the next 4 or 5 months for sure, as we go through that audit and that planning process. So if you have questions about that, or you want to see updates, those will be coming through my office until we get to that point where we feel pretty established in what we're doing and can hand it off to somebody.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. This brings us to our consent agenda. Resolution 9172, the consent agenda includes our board meeting minutes, our committee summaries, personnel staffing, and that includes resignations, retirements, and hiring, the approval of bills, and also include a policy, but this evening there are no policy items on there. Do I hear a motion on 9172?
So moved.
Moved by Tina. Do I hear a second?
Second.
It was Mike. Comments or questions on the motion? Roll call on the motion, please.
Tony Arnett,
Yes?
Mike Higgins,
Yes.
Lori Holland,
Yes.
Diana Johnson,
Yes.
Tina Johnson, yes, David Schrader,
Yes.
David Smith,
Yes.
Doug Will,
Yes.
Craig Morton.
Yes.
And the motion carries. This takes us to our remaining resolutions for the evening. The first one up is 9173, which is setting our open enrollment seat availability. Do I hear a motion on 9173? Second. Moved by David Smith, seconded by Craig. Comments or questions on this motion? It's an annual thing we do, set the maximum possible availability. All right.
Just,
Please.
the number, which department or which committee generates these? What's the math that goes into them? Not what numbers did we arrive at, just the methodology that is used to arrive at it.
So I'll need Jenny to answer that question. Jenny and Aaron.
Yep, so for the special education seats, Aaron and I move our current caseload up 1 year, so graduate seniors, and then we take a look at what we would say would be a per case manager, so special ed teacher number that we would aim for a caseload. You know, it's challenging because, you know, 1 doesn't equal 1 doesn't equal 1 when it comes to kids without IEPs, but we make an estimate. Then we take a look at our occupied space, and if there's a difference between our calculated space and our occupied space, and that's what brings us to these numbers.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And then the regular education, I know it was determined, I think, 2 years ago.
Right,
Or
right,
why
right,
determined to
yeah,
see what we can get.
Right. Take all comers. Got it, right? Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on the motion? All those in favor of 9173 signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next is 9174, setting the board candidates for our April 4th, 2023 spring election. Do I hear a motion on 9174?
So moved.
Moved by David Schrader. Is there a second?
Second.
That was Tina.
Yeah.
And again, the order appearance on the ballot is Michael Higgins, Fred Yant, and Diana Johnson. There are 3 seats up and 3 candidates.
Congratulations.
We haven't voted on it yet.
You need a vote.
All right.
And hopefully there's.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? And the motion carries.
Now, congratulations.
Make sure you vote for yourselves, there's at least one.
Hopefully there's not a right- hopefully there's not a right- That joke never gets old.
Oh, but I don't think it's totally so bad.
All right, next one is 9175, which is the previously discussed motion for a contract with D&D Communications Services. Do I hear a motion on 9175?
So moved.
That was by Mike. And do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Craig. Comments or questions on the motion? Again, the specific scope is attached. Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Mike Higgins,
Yes.
Lori Holland,
Yes.
Diana Johnson,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
David Schrader,
Yes.
David Smith,
Yes.
Doug Will,
Yes.
Craig Wortman.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Our next item is 9176, and this is the bid for the HVAC work at Schurz and Douglas. Do I hear a motion on 9176?
So moved.
Moved by Mike, and a second?
Second.
Second by Lori. So again, this follows on the action taken earlier this summer by the board to put ESSER funds toward installing cooling in both of these buildings. I would mention that we have present Brian Medina from CG Schmidt, who's acting as our advising contractor for this. So if you do have questions and it's necessary to get answers from Brian, he is here and available. Are there comments or questions on the motion?
Continue to have concerns over us spending this scope of our ESSER funds to cool classrooms at two schools, don't have cooling now. Just to put some things in perspective of what we're doing, we had a budget of $1.7 million for this. It is coming in at 2.1 million. That's 21% over that budget. There is an additional cost of nearly $24,000 per year of maintenance expenses and ongoing cost of running the units that we anticipate. So if this is a 20-year life, that's another $500,000 that we're committing the district to spending for this. That's $43 per 554 students each year, just to have the cooling. When you add that into the budget, we're at 150% of our budget that we had originally talked about for the biggest ESSER spend that we're talking about. A per cost per student per year, it's $228 that we're talking about spending. Put that in, you've all heard me talk about it, I don't need to talk about it more, but personally don't see this as the wise spending of the ESSER dollars intended to significantly change the education of our kids coming out of COVID.
Appreciating the detail there. I will note that when the board acted on this in the summer, we knew that that number that we put in that budget was already out of date. It was the only number we had available at that time. We knew it was out of date, particularly we knew with inflation this year. So we knew it was going to go up. I'm not sure we necessarily knew how much it was going to go up. We definitely knew it was going to go up. Other comments or questions on the motion?
Where will the excess funds be coming from?
Our recommendation is that they come out of ESSER funds. We have a number of funds within ESSER that are still unassigned. If you do not want to take it from ESSER funds, we could look at either having it come out of fund balance or our Fund 46. So there are 3 different pots of money that we could easily use to cover the cost. I would say that our recommendation from the administrative standpoint would be the ESSER funds.
And again, for clarification, there's between $700,000 and $800,000 worth of unallocated ESSER funds when the board took action over the summer, so he's suggesting that we would employ roughly half of that. And again, we do know there are other items in ESSER that had cost estimates that may come under.
And this, the way the resolution is written, that's what will happen. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And also for the record, when we considered the options on the finance committee for air conditioning units, we tried to find the one that would provide the best value to the district as far as efficiency is concerned and long-term viability to minimize the cost to the district.
So, maybe Brian could talk about the return of investment portion of it.
Sure, yeah, and I sent the PowerPoint, but don't necessarily need to plug it in right now, unless there's any specific questions. So yeah, we reached out, the school district reached out for contractors with ideas. C.G. Schmidt was awarded to bring those ideas to you. So we did present 3 different types of solutions for the school, all with varying costs. And the one we did land on was the direct expansion cooling, only because it was the one option that provided the best increase in air quality and filtration. It was also the cheapest upfront cost. And I think the thing to note about upgrading the units now, the nice thing is the Department of Energy's came out, it was 6 years ago, and said all HVAC equipment in certain buckets need to increase certain performances. And one of those was the kind of solution that we're offering. So I think it was 6 years ago, they had to be increased by 15%. And then it's just kicking into 2023, it's another 15%. So it's actually 30% more efficient overall than units that were manufactured 6 years ago. So the nice thing is you're kind of starting fresh. You're starting from a 30% efficiency. The delta comes from you don't have air conditioning currently, right? So that's where what wasn't factored in the number I was given was that 30% efficiency on the front end for the heating season. So while that's true, it was kind of the worst case scenario, and that was also based off of running the units 100 days per year at 72 degrees. So those can kind of be controlled through building good maintenance. And just going through that 30%, we ran the calculations, the return on investment would be under 9 years. But then also the other thing that think about, the current units aren't quite yet at their end of their useful life, but you're kind of restarting that 20-year life cycle. So you're probably, I think we figured on 5 to 6 more years of useful life within those units.
Of our current units.
Of your current units, correct. So you're kind of restarting that. And then I was talking to Josh earlier because me and Josh have a previous relationship for Fort Atkinson. So know him very well. We kind of talked about potentially looking at other avenues if the board approves this option of looking for homes for these units. We do a lot of work in schools that have original equipment. And I said that at the finance committee, HVAC is a lot like a car. When people say, well, when do we get rid of it? It really depends on how much money you want to put into it, right? It's how much maintenance you want to keep putting into it. As newer technologies, things become more efficient. And so we do work with a lot of school districts that have like original equipment from like the 60s and 70s that could really maybe be interested in that equipment as an upgrade in their school. So potential.
And I'll add to what Brian said. We kept some scope out of this project, like Webster's cafeteria, the gymnasium and Maisonneuve at the middle school. So there are certain areas still within the district that, should we want to tackle in the future, we probably should carve out those spaces too, if that's what the board is wishing to do.
And one of the other small points were if you plan to do any kind of renovations in the future, this system would probably lead to be the most,
Adaptive.
yeah, it would be set up much better for if you're going to blow out walls or do any major remodeling of the school. It's kind of on the outside wall. I think we're looking to put the majority of the units on the roof, so they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, you can hear them. So from a future flexibility standpoint, that was another, one of the pluses of the particular system that was shown. But I'm happy to answer any other questions that you have.
Board members? any
Just other
questions?
comment,
David?
just as a matter of course, on these types of things, I typically abstain, not knowing who the subcontractors and et cetera are. So if the bids haven't been awarded, I'm not self-dealing, so I'll abstain from the vote.
Any other comments or questions on the motion?
As far as the detail, one other detail, as far as the warranty on the equipment,
Right.
it said standard warranty. I don't know why I was looking through.
Oh, yeah, and then at CD Schmidt, typically on a construction project, it's a 1 year, like parts and performance 100% warranty. CD Schmidt is a 2-year warranty on everything, and then also we call it a lifetime commitment. I know it sounds salesy, but anytime that you need us for the life of the building, if there's something that was wrong with any of those things, we'll correct it. So, and then any manufacturer's warranties that have.
Yeah, that's the one I was looking at, like Train for warranty. It just said standard warranty.
Yeah, and we can get more detail on those. And then as we get equipment, those are the ones that were proposed. I think the prudent choice before we order would get several other bids and make sure we line them up and compare them with Jared and Josh and say, here are the options and here are the different costs. We might get better than what's quoted at the time. Maybe, but then we make a choice on which manufacturer that the district wanted. I wouldn't say this is what we're putting in the school. So just be a presenting of the facts and the team would make a choice.
Yeah.
Only other question, just the way the resolution's worded with the exact dollar amounts, or is there any, I know your proposal included some contingencies. The resolution has almost down to the decimal place. Are we okay with that so that it doesn't come back to the board? Does it need to be, if we go $1 over, is that where we at?
How comfortable are you, Brian?
Yeah, well, if that's the number.
Feeling good.
Okay, good.
There you go.
It's got a 5% contingency.
I know.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure it doesn't end up back, like we've approved something that we have to go back and revisit again.
If Brian says he's feeling good about the contingency, I'll hold him as best I can to the contingency.
Works for me.
The sooner we can order the equipment, the more.
Well,
Yeah.
that was one of the factors of bringing it out earlier, or not earlier, but getting this done.
Yeah, sooner is better. In an ideal world, this equipment would be ordered already, so we're really pressing for time to get the equipment ordered so the install can happen.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on the motion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Tony Arnett,
Yes.
Mike Higgins,
Yes.
Lori Howard,
Yes.
Diana Johnson,
Yes.
Tina Johnson,
Yes.
David Schrader,
Abstain?
David Smith,
No.
Doug Will,
Yes.
Craig Wortman.
Yes.
And the motion carries. Thank you,
Thank
Brian.
you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Our last resolution for this evening is 9177, this is a vehicle purchase. Do I hear a motion on 9177? Mike, and is there a second?
Second.
Lori? Again, this was also mentioned previously in the discussion of the fiscal committee meeting. Are there comments or questions on the motion?
May I ask, because I missed it, what this, is this a custodial vehicle transporting?
I can clarify.
Okay.
So the vehicle in question is a Ford 550. It is the cab and chassis. There are some upbuilds that we'll have to take on after the purchase of the vehicle. That's the dump box, salting unit, and whatever else, plow that we're going to need to outfit it with. Ford doesn't do that. That's a third-party company. Again, the other thing I'll say is that the rate that we're given is the state rate for vehicles. So that's why you wouldn't see any other bids, because it's the lowest rate that we can get. So there's no sense to get other bids out there for that. So just wanted to share that with you, and that's gonna be our main replacement for, it'll have a dump bed on the back and plow on the front, and be a big influence for us.
Okay, any other comments or questions on the motion? Hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Tony Arnett,
Yes?
Mike Higgins,
Yes.
Lori Collins,
Yes.
Diana Johnson.
Yes.
Tina Johnson. Yes. David Schrader,
Yes.
Dave Smith,
Yes.
Doug Will,
Yes.
Craig Wortman.
And the motion carries. That concludes our resolutions for this evening. This is the second point in the agenda where members of the audience may address the board. Howard, do we have anybody online? All right, anyone present here? Want to ask questions? Nope. All right. Then lastly, touching on agenda planning, I know some members attended these portions of the WASB convention and wanted to ask if you would like an opportunity at our next month's agenda to be able to discuss what you saw and heard there.
Yes.
All right, and I will make sure that that is on the agenda for next month. There being nothing, no other business before the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
David.
Yes, I was gonna talk to you about that.
I don't know, I heard it differently, I heard it correctly. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye, opposed? We stand adjourned.